the Derby Uni Library live stream with your skills team. Oh God, that was cheesy, wasn't it?
A little bit, Tim.
A little bit, yeah. Good afternoon. It is 12:30 here in Derby. It's very grey outside, unfortunately, but I think you can see us quite well. Today's live stream is going to be about reflective practice and how you can use reflection. And we realised that actually, because we've been doing this live stream for a while now, it would be really interesting to reflect on the live stream.
Yes, in the project that we're doing.
So we have prepared really well. We've got a long list of things to get through, so we'll go and start on the first one. Basically what we're going to talk about is how we actually reflect ourselves as a skills team on the things that we do. So for you, if you've been viewing some of our YouTube videos or followed us on live streams, you might have noticed that hopefully each time we get a little bit better.
Just a little bit, but continuously. Hopefully we'll become professional one day.
Yeah, slim chance of that happening. But we are always thinking about trying to improve what we're doing. So what did we do this morning, for example, Alex?
Well, this morning we went and watched a lot of YouTube content and tried to reflect on what we could do that they're doing to improve our content. Right now, for example, I'm reflecting upon the introduction that we've just done and thought actually maybe it's worth saying what we can do, what we're going to talk about over the two parts of the live stream. So the first part now we're going to talk about a reflection on our YouTube and use that to show how we reflect and show how we can improve over time. But then the second half, what are we going to be talking about, Tim?
Well, in the second half, we're going to be talking about more practical models of reflection. It sounds rather boring, but actually it's really useful, especially if you're a student. A lot of you will be asked to write reflectively, and you can also use reflection in your study anyway, and just keep becoming a better student, essentially. So we'll be looking at things like the very exciting experiential learning model by Kolb, and double loop learning, which is something that was developed by Argyris in 91, I want to say, and Kolb in 84. You can see my librarian self coming through. But first we're going to continue talking about how we use reflection in our practice. So you mentioned actually you're doing instant reflection, which is always interesting. But the reflective practice, talk about our introduction, for example. One of the things that we noticed this morning, so what we did was we all picked a video and we looked at them. And we looked at the things that we liked and that we didn't like. And one of the things that we actually liked is that people just start their video.
Yeah. And usually what we've done in the past is we've introduced ourselves and I've gone on for a while saying, I'm Alex from the skills team, or this is Naomi, or this is Diana, here's our roles. Whereas what they do, just go on with it. Just talk. People can find out about them if they'd like to. It's in the description if they really want to. And
so do we think that my horrible slogan that I started off with is going to stick?
A version of it may stick, but not that version.
Okay.
But over time we'll develop these things and we'll reflect and we'll improve. So, but I think we can do slightly better over time.
I'm fairly sure we can do better, yeah. One of the things that we need to happen as well, and that we're really keen on happening, is that you actually leave feedback for us as well. Because we're making this not because we think we do think it's fun and we do think it's great stuff, but why we're making this is because we're trying to help as many students as possible. And one form of reflection, and we'll talk about this in a bit more detail in the second part, is to do with understanding the feedback that you get and actually acting on the feedback that you get. And you've been talking to a lot of students about what we're doing with YouTube and with the stream, etc.
Yeah.
What do people think? What do they say to you in general?
They think it's quite cool. They weren't expecting that we'd have a YouTube channel that students could get actual support with and help with. It's a different form of content. They think that our videos could potentially be longer at times and be a bit more in depth, is what I've found. And that's something we're taking on board, which is why our live streams are now longer than the 3-minute shorts videos we've done. But as well, other students say that they like that short content where they can get the advice pretty quickly. Yeah. So it's all about having a mix of content for a mix of different learning styles.
Yeah. One of the things that we've talked about a lot as well is the audio. So we're very aware that we're not professional. Like I said before, even though we do this as part of our job, it's not what we do all the time. And we're also aware that the sound isn't always perfect. So this morning, what did you do earlier before the stream?
I tried to look into a noise gate, we looked at the fact that the audio needs improving. We thought, what steps could we take? So I then did some research online, found out that there's a filter that I could use on our streaming service, which is open broadcast software called NoiseGate, and then I set that up with the use and help of my team, or the team, and also Dan and Hamish, who is sitting off screen on the floor because we told us that she can't make any noise in the background, and we're also using her desk as where the camera is.
Yeah, so it's about that sort of constant evolving aspect, if you like, and it's been a very conscious decision for this team. Apologies, I've still got the hangover of a flu from last week. It's been a really conscious effort for the team to try and improve, and rather than wait until we had everything perfect, we decided that we were just going to launch a live stream, see what it looked like, see what it felt like, and then improve on that. And that's basically what we're doing all the time.
Yeah, it's a good idea really to throw yourself in at the deep end, even if you don't think you can necessarily do something, because the worst thing that can happen is it doesn't go well, and then you can improve on that. It's a first step, and it may be a big step, but actually it's a good first step to do. And I think that a lot of times when I've developed as a person, especially when I was a student, was because I took them big first steps where I wasn't sure that it would be perfect, and I was able to develop and get better from there. But taking that first step in terms of improving was a big thing. So that's something that I reflected upon my student journey.
Yeah. And actually that's a really interesting aspect of reflection in general. So I normally work, normally not anymore, I now work both at Kettleston Road and Chesterfield campus. And in Chesterfield I work a lot with nursing students who are being told they have to be reflective and use reflective practice. And it's actually key to, for example, nursing and our NHS, the National Health Service. Reflective practice is used to make things better all the time. And it's really important to acknowledge that reflection has a role in our development as well. So what we're going to do in a minute, I don't know what time, how many minutes have we streamed now, roughly? 7 minutes?
Yeah.
Crikey, we've got a long way to go still. So I was going to talk a bit more about that with Naomi, but we're going to continue about that, and we're going to talk a bit about setting goals.
Yeah, I think setting goals is key to reflection. So in the reflective models that Naomi and Tim will talk about once I leave and probably get wheeled away, is one of those things is about the next steps. So you look at where you are and then you think, what's the next step? So that's something that Tim does with us with the team a lot, is that he sets us goals, often ambitious goals, and we try and think what are the next steps in terms of to get to them goals. So I do a lot of backwards planning. I look at what the goal is and try and think, how can I possibly achieve that from what the goal is? And they are ambitious, but they help us move on, and then we can reflect and improve on where we were.
Yeah, and it's also important that we embed things into policy. So one of Naomi's roles in the team is to actually write down policy, make sure that we adhere to it. So developing, I think you reflected on this last week actually in the live stream, making lots of, how do I put it politely, lists of things that we want to do and how we want to work, and creating those lists and then sending them to me and overwhelming me with them. So making lists and setting goals is actually really important. And also, if you have good reflective practice, looking at how you do things is really important in that aspect.
Yeah. Especially with setting the goals, isn't it? So I know that with me, one of the things that when I went into my second year, I looked at how I was doing and I realised I needed to be a bit more critical and have more critical analysis in my work. So I thought, okay, that's what I need to do, that's the end goal. How can I get there? So for example, I went to the library, I went and got a skills book on it called, I think it's Getting Critical, and I did some research on how I can do that. Now you can look at the skills guides. We're going to have a video out about critical analysis, and probably sometime in the future we're going to have a YouTube video and a podcast on it.
Yeah.
Actually, we will do as part of the assignment journey. And Tim, you're going to be on that as well.
Yes, I believe so. Yeah, I don't know when, but we'll have a look at that.
It's in a few weeks. In your calendar.
Oh, good, excellent.
It's 2 months from now.
Yeah. So setting goals when you're a student is, and you mentioned that, becoming more critical, for example. So a lot of the queries that we get as a skills service are about, I'm now in year 3 and I have to write more critically and I don't know how to do that. if you know where you are in your student journey, and you know that you're going to be going to year 3, where you have to become more critical, it's actually really valuable to understand that you can already start working towards that.
Yeah.
So when you're in year 2 and you know that you're going to have to be writing a big dissertation, for example, in year 3, and being critical is very important in that, if you reflect a lot and you understand what's coming up ahead, you can then work towards that, and you can actually make that distance smaller.
Yeah, so you're setting yourself the goal of trying to get ready to write at the third year's level in your second year, so then when you make the mistakes, you're ahead of the game.
Yeah.
And I think that's really quite important, is looking at the highest part, so the best thing you could possibly achieve, and just aiming for it, regardless if you think you can do it. Because the worst thing that can happen is you can go slightly below it. The best thing, you get it. So I never wanted the first. I wanted the 2-1.
You didn't get the first, did you?
Yeah.
Oh God.
I wanted the 2-1, but I aimed for the criteria in the first, and I did it. But I never thought I was good enough to do that.
We just, if you hear us, or if
That's
you see us
Naomi.
looking, we just heard the announcement bell for the library. So if Johnny would please like to collect his shopping from the 2nd floor, please do so now, Johnny, so we don't get the announcement. I hardly ever hear the announcement bell. This is something we're going to have to reflect on as well. Who do we tell not to use the announcement bell? Going back to where we were, though, you made a really valid point about making mistakes. We know as a skills team that we make mistakes, right? When we make these productions, of course we make mistakes, and that's actually really normal. Being afraid of making mistakes stops people actually achieving things. And I don't want to sound like a motivational coach or anything like that. But when I did my PhD, and maybe we'll get to talk about my PhD in particular a bit later, I was always worried about what I was sending in to my supervisors. And I was actually creating a sort of, how would you call it, like an angstiness? I was scared of being judged for the work that I did. And the only reason I actually finished my PhD was because I realized that actually doing a PhD is about making mistakes and understanding that journey.
Well, university is all about that, actually. So the first 2 years of the university are set up so that you can make them mistakes.
Yeah.
So, for example, the first year currently counts as 0% of your end grade. The second year, only 20%. And that's so that you can make those mistakes. And then when you get to the third year, you have been able to reflect and learn from those. I made loads of mistakes. I've talked about them in several podcasts, and I was able to reflect, learn from it, and not do it again. So that when it counted in my third year, I didn't do the same thing. So
and you got the first.
Yeah.
So I went to. You might have noticed that my accent is a bit weird. My voice is a bit weird at the moment because of a cold I'm fighting. But I went to university in the Netherlands. I filled my first 2 degrees. And in the Netherlands back then, I'm old now, so I can say back then. When you went to the university, you were expected to get a number of study points or credits every year, and I was too busy doing other things, so I always kept failing. That actually shaped me, though, because I accepted that I wasn't doing the things I needed to do to get there. So by the time I got to my 3rd attempt of getting a degree, and they said, well, yeah, you can do something, but the only thing we allow you to do is to become a librarian, which is how I became a librarian. When I got to that point, I had reflected enough on why I had failed before, and I could actually do it properly. And that, again, that word reflect there is so important, because if you don't accept that you reflect and make mistakes, you're not learning, essentially.
And just think, now Tim is a doctor, and everyone, and just even though you failed the first 2 attempts, you were still able to become a doctor and do a PhD, which is amazing, an amazing story. But it's all about reflecting and learning and not giving up and being resilient and still trying and still accepting that you have made mistakes, but how can you learn?
Being persistent.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things that you can do with reflection, and it's really important, I think, for you as a student at the University of Derby or wherever you are. You might not even be a student if you're watching this because we're sending it out to YouTube, but reflecting on what you are doing is crucial. And it's not just a personal skill. So as a university, we always talk about transferable skills and employability skills. A good employer will look for staff that are reflective, that aren't afraid of making mistakes. What I as a manager really hate, Don't worry, you don't do this. But what I really would hate, that's better. What I would hate as manager is that if someone's made a mistake, they try and hide it, they try and run away from it. Just own up your mistake, learn from it, and then we can move on from it. And that's really important. It's a really important skill in life in general, I think.
Something I remember you saying in my job interview was every day is a learning day.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you said that today, actually, this morning, and so did Naomi as well.
Yeah.
But it's all with reflection. It's all about models, isn't it? So there are some models out there that can help you do it. So sometimes we've been talking about ways that we reflect, and there are certain models that we have available on our skills guides, aren't there?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Shall we switch over then?
So yeah, I don't want to get wheeled away for the second live stream away, but it looks like it's going that way.
We should make that a team, to be honest, Alex.
I should have told you before to get Naomi to wheel out.
So Naomi is joining us.
That was very smooth, Alex. I'm impressed with that lead in to the next section of the live
That's something
stream.
we can work on, bridges.
I've been doing it in our podcasts.
Oh.
Also, I've just been sat behind the computer watching what you guys are seeing. And I'm very intrigued by the hedgehog because it looked like it was sat on Alex's shoulder. Does it look like it's sat on my shoulder?
Maybe we can reflect on that. Is that a good thing?
Well, I like the idea of having a
It's
shoulder
cute.
hedgehog.
Yeah, the only problem is it's a bit, it's stick. What's it?
Spiky.
Spiky, that's it.
But that's all right because if it's on my shoulder,
Does that mean I've got a horse on my shoulder?
not in quite the same way.
Hello,
And
how
then
are
there's
you?
this. I think this is really cute. I don't know about anyone else. I think this is
No.
really cute, and it sort of looks like it's smiling benevolently down on me.
No, it's getting replaced soon.
I was thinking as well, again, because we're all we genuinely are always thinking about what we can do to improve. I think, and let us know what you think. We've got more pictures at the top which you can't see. I think we need to bring some of the top pictures down to the bottom.
No, we just need to add more pictures.
Do you think?
Yeah, just put more on.
There we go.
There's always more cuddly animals.
That's true.
Yeah, and actually, now that you've raised it, this wall is the result of Diana creating a cuddly animal. Now, what was it called? Grumpy animal wall. I don't know if it's in shot, but on the right you can see, or on your left actually, you can see the grumpy bug. Can you not see it? Oh,
No,
that's
like I
a
said,
shame.
this is what I'm saying. This is exactly.
We need multi-camera
We've
setup.
got this. We've got this on film. So can I point out and we can rewind? That's exactly what I'm saying. We should move the one from the top down. So then Diana's grumpy pug can be in shot.
But I want. Yeah. But anyway, we reflected on our wall and decided that what Diana had come up with was brilliant, so we put it everywhere. And we quite like it.
True.
Yeah. So, we're going to be talking about models, and now we've got a slight problem.
What?
Because Alex will be able to put the model on screen, but we can't see it. Someone's thought of everything. You will notice, by the way, now that I'm a big picture guy. I don't do details, which is why I need this team, because they're brilliant at the detail.
I certainly can pull up the skills guides and because so I was thinking about this, and when I was told, Naomi, you're going to be on this bit to talk about the models, I thought to myself, I cannot remember what the models are, quite frankly, but I don't need to remember what the models are because I can look them up. So
There's actually, are models always valid? That's a big question.
Did you ask me to talk about models?
I
Just
did
to tell
ask
me
you to
that
talk.
that's completely not valid and not worth my time. I'll go.
No, it's fine. No, but sometimes I've noticed with the student nurse, for example, that they get too hung up on the model and they don't use it. Yeah, exactly. It's a tool. You use it as a tool.
You've got a hammer that
manner.
helps you bang in nails. You don't need to use your hammer to do the washing up.
Yeah. Very important, by the way, lip guides, our skills guides are on a website called lipguides.derby.ac.uk. In the description below you will find a link to it, and that's where you can find guides to all sorts of different things, so academic writing, reflective practice, referencing, what else have we got on there? We've got
critical thinking, finding sources of information,
also
work-life balance.
Yeah, things that you need at university, essentially. And the good news is you don't need to be a University of Derby student to go on there. You can also go on there if you're like in one of our partner colleges, or if you're in a school and you're thinking about coming to Derby, or whatever it is, you can get access to our wonderful guides. So, models of reflection.
Which do you want to talk about first?
Well, Alex has got one on screen, that's the Kolb one.
Kolb.
Yeah, so now we'll talk a bit more about David J. Kolb, I think his name was. Kolb is the granddaddy of reflective models, in a way. It's not entirely true because Borton was before him, but Kolb came up with a model that was called Experiential Learning. He published it in 1984, he taught about it in the years before that. And it's actually a really straightforward model. And what Kolb tried to achieve was to make people understand that you learn by experience. So the stuff that we just talked about, making mistakes and all that, that's fine. That's part of the experience. That's where you learn. So has Alex got it up on the screen? Yeah? So do you want to talk through from sort of top to clockwise?
Top to clockwise?
I don't know. You know what I mean.
I'm not sure I can talk through it from top to clockwise. But so the model as we have on the guide, because that's what I'm looking at right now, we have what happened. So I've talked before in different videos about reflection and the different stages of that. So what happened, descriptive stage.
Yeah.
What actually happened in that experience?
Yeah.
What was my experience of it? That's starting to think about it. What was that? Bringing it personal. How did I experience it?
Yeah.
And that's really important. I think it's important to have both actually. How did I experience it? If there were other people involved, such as an audience, how did they experience it? So when we're thinking about this live stream, we need to think about how we felt doing it.
Yeah.
But also, how do we think that
how is it
everyone
perceived?
watching, how's it coming across? Why did it happen? We've got next. Is there any research to deepen my understanding? That's taking that extra step on. So we've thought about things from our perspective. We've thought about things from the third person perspective. How can we then bring in some academic theories? How can we do that? That's that scholarly bit.
Yeah.
How can we bring in the scholarliness into what we're doing? And then what will I do if or when it happens again? So that's that future focused bit.
Yeah, that's setting your goals.
We've touched on already.
Yeah. So this model is actually, if we go back to the example we used earlier with Alex about the audio, for example, we knew that we had a problem with the audio because we experienced it ourselves when we watched back our videos. So we know what happened because there was a problem with the audio. We looked into why it happened, how we perceived that problem to be, and then basically Alex did a bit of research, went on to Google, essentially, and found out about noise gates and being able to take the hum out of the video. If the hum is back in this video, by the way, we're going to reflect on it.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. But the other thing that we already did as well is that we've looked forward. So we're already planning how we're going to improve the audio. I've got it in the back of my car at the moment. So hopefully we will be able to work a bit on the audio in general, identify what the problems are and fix them.
Just for some context, Tim's talking about improving the hardware. We have new hardware in the back of Tim's car.
Yeah,
That's not just where Tim keeps like an ideas closet or something.
Oh my, yeah. This is my cupboard of audio ideas. Yeah, no, it's the hardware. Yes, thanks. Well pointed out. So Kolb is one model, and Kolb is actually really about understanding experience and experience learning. So I'll just throw this in. I don't want to show off my academic keenness, but this happens to be what I did a lot of my PhD about. In 1967, I think it was, there was a chap, I can't remember his name, so I'm going to ask Alex to Google it. He wrote a book called Deschooling Society. And Deschooling Society was actually one of Kolb's inspirations. Because what this gentleman said, and he was a Russian, I believe, who lived in Cuba. And Cuba at the time was a bit of a hotbed, Bay of Pigs and all that sort of stuff. And this gentleman talked about education, and actually Cuba, despite being a communist country and etc., their focus has always been on communication. It's renowned for having a really good a really good educational system. And one of the things that he looked at was, why are our kids going to school? Why do we put children in a classroom with 30 other children and then expect them to learn something? Why don't we actually just put the kids in a tradesman's workshop and let them observe what's going on?
Can you imagine the risk assessment?
We live in different times now. What was his name, Alex?
Ivan Illich.
Ivan Illich, yes, that's right. So what he did was look really critically at something that we perceive as very normal, which is going to school and sitting in a class. Yeah, and it's a great read. If you ever get a chance to read it. But what Kolb did was take that idea and actually make it practicable, right? So rather than saying we need to close all the schools and all the 5-year-olds need to work in the brick factory down the road, which is probably slightly unethical. What Kolb did was say, how would you use this in the workplace? Yeah, and that's what's really interesting about Kolb's model, because we touched upon it earlier. It's a skill that you learn at university, hopefully, but it's a skill that's really rewarded and really looked for in corporate life, if you like.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So shall we go and look at another model as well?
You wanted me to ask you about, in a very unscripted way, double loop feedback. Is that yet? Is that later?
Ooh, shall we talk about double loop feedback?
You know what? Let's talk. Tim, tell me about double loop feedback.
It's not like we have a piece of paper with everything on it.
Oh, do we? I didn't even notice.
I know, it's great, isn't it? We're going to reflect on that piece of paper later.
Are we?
Yeah, so...
It needs to be bigger. I can't read it.
There you go. Immediate point. You need to check your glasses as well. So, double loop learning is another academic source, if you like, a guy called Argyris, and I can't remember Donald Argyris, I think it was his name. Argyris was actually interested in how we deal with feedback. So if we talk about Kolb and experiential learning and getting feedback is really important, but he also coupled that to the idea of learning. And single loop learning is where I tell you something and I expect you to have learned this. And a real good example of it is that we've just had that with you. I asked Alex to show you how to do something, and you said, well, actually, I like a list.
I do like a list.
Yes, and then you do like a list. And then that learning by making that list is really important. So that's what we call double loop learning, if you like. So it's not just showing someone how to do it, but then reflecting on what your perception is.
Wait, so do you mean that if Alex makes me a list for how to do the technical stuff, that is contributing to Alex's learning?
Yes, or if you were actually to make a list based on what Alex was showing you. Yeah? Mm-hmm. So it's passing through your brain multiple times.
Yes.
Yeah? I'm butchering this a bit, by the way, because we could talk about Argyris forever. But the other really important thing about Argyris, and I think Alex might have a model that says this, but it might be the wrong one. I can't see it on screen, so forgive me if this is the wrong one. But one of the things that he says is that feedback is really important. Right?
What if you're a kind of person that feels like, actually, I think passing through my mind twice may not quite do it? You get like quadruple loop learning.
Yeah. Well, no.
It's a loop, so you're going around. I see it's going round and round in a loop.
Keep going. Yeah, like a hamster wheel.
Yes.
Yeah, you put this little hedgehog on a little hamster wheel.
Oh no, we're not doing that to the hedgehog. Look at its face.
You put this horse in one of those things where it goes round.
Can I go completely off topic? I was once on a train, and I got onto this train, and you know how you get onto a train, there's no seats, so you're standing up, so I'm standing up thinking this is a rubbish train journey. And then...
Was it with Norden?
I can't remember that detail. Oh. And then a lady got on with a little baby, and I'm like, oh, baby, that's quite cute. That's up the train journey for me. And then someone got on with a puppy. This journey's getting better and better. And then someone got on.
I can see why you asked if we could go off topic. Where are we going?
Out of their pocket came a little pygmy hedgehog, and I was just like, this is the best train journey I've ever had ever.
What did you learn? What did you learn from this experience?
Cute things help enhance a very boring and dull train journey.
Are you calling our stream boring and dull with all these cute animals?
No.
Okay.
I think that was the correct answer there. That was a leading question if ever there was one.
Yeah. Let us know in the comments. And actually we're live streaming, so people can immediately let us know if they chat with us. So the feedback is really important.
Yes, back on topic.
Yeah.
Again, we do podcasts, and everything I say pretty much gets edited out of the podcast.
I wonder why.
But the live streams are amazing because it's live, so no one can censor me.
Quick, guys, jump in and stop us. Right, so feedback is really important. And actually, you raised something that I thought you were raising something. How do you deal with feedback?
No, I wasn't. You thought I was raising something, but I'd let you down.
What you said was, no, we're carrying on. What you said was that if you don't do it, if you don't have double
Lots of
learning,
times.
quadruple learning.
Yeah.
But actually, I thought you were going to ask about if you don't like getting feedback. And getting feedback is really important. And I know
It's difficult though.
it
It's
is
not
difficult.
easy.
Yeah.
It's challenging.
And getting good feedback is really important as well. So if you struggle with getting feedback, reflect on that and learn from it. You can actually get better at receiving feedback.
Yeah. So much of it is about the mindset you go in. Because
Yeah.
feedback should, if it's good feedback, it should contain positive things as well as negative things. It should be
Unless everything is negative that you did.
Do you think? I don't.
You know, I'm brutally honest.
No, I know, but I just don't think there'll be a scenario ever where everything is bad. There's always going to be something that you can look at and say, actually, no, that bit was good.
We're going to ask now.
Now, this is when we get a comment back and think,
Yeah.
actually, in this video, everything was
Exactly.
bad.
This
There
is
is
what
no redeeming
Was there anything
feature.
good or bad in this video? And on that note, we will call it a day. Thank you for watching, and we shall see you another day.